Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and welcome to Season 3 of Every Version Ever. I'm so excited for this year, and I've got a ton of great episodes coming, based on some great stories, some of which we've never covered before. But before we get into our first new series of the year, let's quickly address the elephant in the room. You'll probably notice that it's been a while since Season 2. It's currently March, closing in on the end of March, and it's been well over 2 months since the last episode. And unfortunately, that might be closer to the norm going forward. Hopefully not with quite as big of a break, but there will probably be a few more gaps in the schedule than I've had in the past. With my new job, not exactly new now, in a few months I'll have been working there a year, time flies, but with this job, as it is full-time, I don't have as much time for podcasting as I've had in the past, so the release schedule here is going to be a little bit more spread out than it has been. However, I am going to do my best to minimize gaps, mostly by recording and editing in advance, so that I can maintain a weekly release schedule during each series. So every time we start a new series, covering a new story, I'll hopefully be able to go the length of the series with no gap. That way I'll save the breaks to fall between each series. I can't promise that will always happen, but that's what I'll be aiming for. So now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the announcement of the very first story of the season, Peter and the Wolf. This is not a traditional classic story, like The Wizard of Oz or The Secret Garden. It's not even one that I was really planning on using in this podcast. I'll explain more as we get into the episodes. But this is technically based on a piece of music, not a story, but the composition does have a general narrative that's been adapted for the screen a number of times, and we're going to be covering pretty much all the mainstream releases that I was able to find. I'm sure there are a few really obscure ones that I missed, and I know there's at least one that I absolutely could not find. There was a short film by an artist named Caroline Leaf, who apparently invented sand animation, and her first film using the medium was an adaptation of Peter and the Wolf. I could not find that one anywhere. As near as I can tell, it's in a museum's collection somewhere, and only gets screened at that museum. In addition to any ones I couldn't find or any ones that I might have missed, there are also all sorts of videos on YouTube of varying quality of various symphonies and ballets around the world. There were too many to cover, not to mention the fact that most of them were probably bootleg recordings from the audience anyway, so I'll be sticking mainly to film and television versions that have had some kind of home release. We're going to be covering the most famous versions out there, and since this is already a semi-obscure story, some of the most famous versions are probably rather obscure themselves. Now, since it's been so long since last season, and since the first episode is going to be very short, to kick things off, I'll be releasing 2 episodes right in a row. The first one will be up right after this introduction, talking about Disney's version of the story, a segment from the film Make Mine Music, and then tomorrow we'll have a longer episode talking about the film that inspired this whole series, a British, Norwegian, Polish stop-motion animation version. Future episodes will cover a 90s animated television special, an obscure puppet-based TV special from the 1950s, and a direct-to-video Sesame Street special. There are actually a lot of puppet versions of this story, even some of the ones I won't be covering. A lot of the various symphonies and ballets use puppets. I guess there's just something about this story that really lends itself to puppetry. After Peter and the Wolf, we'll get back into more familiar territory. I'm planning on doing another Alice in Wonderland series in the summer. But before that, I have another brand new to the podcast story. I and a whole bunch of friends are going to be covering a myriad of Cinderella stories. I don't know how I ended up with as many episodes as I did, but I think we're going to end up with at least 2 full months of Cinderella. So get ready. After that, we'll see what happens. I've wanted to do Treasure Island for a long time, and I've got a bunch of friends who are just waiting for me to do Pride and Prejudice, so I'm thinking those will have to happen this year as well. Anyway, thanks for listening, and stay tuned because the first episode of Season 3 of Every Version Ever is on its way. We'll see you soon.